Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tinisha Spain. And joining me in the studio today are two of our panelists who have brought in a lot of great stuff to talk about and to show you today. But before we get into that, let's have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about where you can find them in the garden. So Phil, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm a retired extension entomologist with the University of Illinois. And so I do bug things, and I'm also a bonsai hobbyist, so I'm going to talk a little bit about trees and pots today.
Excellent. Okay, John.
And I'm John Bodensteiner. I'm a Vermilion County Master Gardener. I dabble in a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I work at I volunteer at a greenhouse, so I also have access to that. So
a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Master gardening and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so let's jump in. You guys brought lots of great stuff to talk about. John, why don't we start with you with one of your show and tells?
Let me talk about, we had a question on prickly pear.
Let's see.
I'm sorry, on the perennial geraniums.
Yes, on how to prune those, or when is the best time to prune those.
When is the best time, I think, to transplant?
Yep. Marge from Taylorville writes, when is the best time to divide and replant my perennial geraniums? They're taking over the flower bed, and what is the best way to divide them?
Okay, and fall or spring is a good time. I like to do mine in the spring, and and like she says, they can take over a certain area. So it is recommended that you divide them every 5 years. And another name for them is cranesbill. The reason for that, I brought a couple of seed. And this is why they are called cranesbill, because as you can see, they have a long, narrow seed, and then they have a little tip at the end that kind of looks like a mouth almost. And this is it's perennial geranium or cranesbill. If you can find it either way if you're Googling it or something like that.
Okay.
This is the flower, and there are different colors of flowers. This is the one I have blooming right now.
It's a pretty like azalea kind
And
of color.
it just gets covered with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's got the real kind of divided leaves, and so it's a very nice plant. I got this from a neighbor 40 years ago, and I've got them all over the yard, and they say that you should divide them about every 5 years. Or to control them, you can dig up on the edge. They are a nice plant if you've got a hillside that is washing, because the roots go everywhere and they're entangled, and they really hold the soil. And so there's a number of ways to divide. You can dig up the whole plant if you're doing it every 5 years. If she's got a bed that's all over, she can just dig a hole and pop the plant out. And then depending on if she wants to transplant it, put it wherever she's going to, kind of divide it, so that they're manageable to the size she wants. Or she can pot them up and give them to friends or neighbors and do that.
Would you transplant a big root ball, or would you dig out plants and tease them out individually?
I would,
or not individually?
It depends on where I'm going to put them. If I'm going to put them in a new bed where I want to make a statement, I would put the whole plant in there. If I'm putting it in amongst things, and they stay nice and, I'd say 8 to 10 inches tall, which is a nice front. And so you can, once you dig them up, you can cut them with a good knife, or some people just go right down the middle and make a shovel and pop that out and put that in. I just like them. They're good. They're hardy. Like I said, I've had mine for over 40 years now, and a neighbor gave them to me, and we've given them to neighbors. I've potted quite a few up, and so just a nice plant to have. So.
Okay.
And so I saw the lady that asked the question. I said, well, I've got to show this. And,
Very nice. Now you know how to divide those. So that in the fall,
I like doing mine in the spring, but you can do it in the fall.
Okay.
One thing you want to do before you dig these up is water it the day before.
Okay.
Water that area that you're going to dig up, so that, and you're going to notice these things are kind of going to wilt a little bit for a day, but they're going to come back. Don't worry if they wilt a little bit, but do water them the day before, especially like Phil and I were talking, we've got bricks right now in our yard trying to get the shovel in. So if you water them good the day before, that loosens that soil up and doesn't harm the roots as much.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Okay, we're going to Phil. Bugs and bonsai.
Bugs and bonsai, B&B.
You need a shirt.
Bed and breakfast, bugs and bonsai.
Bugs and bonsai.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, I won't go to Beavis. All right. Or say the other part. As Bob Uecker, who used to be the announcer for the Milwaukee Brewers, said, this one's a tad overgrown. He always said, you know, these are not bad seats, and they were out in the middle of nowhere. So, but at any rate, this is the time of year, if you have tropical plants, whether they're bonsai or not, is a good time to prune them, to repot them, etc. Essentially, tropical plants do best when the nighttime temperatures are 70 degrees or above. And so that's generally the latter half of June through July and through most of August. And so, and you want a period of 4 or more weeks for the plant to regrow, whether you repot the plant or prune the plant. So, you know, July is the time to work on your tropicals, and they do better if they do it that way. And so once in a while you'll get a long stem coming out, and sometimes these will come from the trunk. This happens to be a Ficus Burt Davii.
Write that down.
Davii. That's Ficus, F-I-C-U-S, means a fig, of which there's something like 350 species. Burt, B-U-R-T, Davii, D-A-V-Y-I. I also see it as David I, and David I, and B-E-R-T, and all sorts of things. But I think the right one is what I just said. And so to cut things back, you always want to go back to where you have something to take off and grow from there. And this is a nice one here. And I really don't need anything that huge. So these are my bonsai pruners, and
it doesn't hurt your feelings a little bit to snip that guy off of there?
No, I just let the plant take all the feelings, which are starting to feel like plants have feelings. So being a studio, you can just. And I have
cutting
some smaller, yeah, cutting room floor. Very good, I like that. And you kind of prune some things back and head them back so that they will tend to be a little more bushier and so on. And so, you know, you have a pruned plant, which will then you'll get some more growing out in this area. And I kind of like this coming off to the side. So that's kind of a way you can prune a bonsai. Okay. It's a little over potted, but it has a big root system, so we're kind of working it down to where it's less of a pot.
All right.
This
that almost doesn't even look real. It's so pretty.
Yeah, it's alive. It's actually a Chinese plant called Chinese sweet plum, Sageretia thesans, S-A-G-E-R. T-I-A, S-A-G-E-R-T-I-A, thesans, T-H-E-E-Z-A-N-S, T-H-E-E-Z-A-N-S. And it's another tropical, and so you don't have to have just figs or Dieffenbachia or something of that nature, Schefflers, to have a tropical plant. An interesting thing about this, I've already just pruned it back. It had some other growth on it, and you can see the new growth coming out, which will kind of take over the spot. An interesting feature about this is from this side, it looks like it's and this is part of a fooling that we do with bonsai sometimes. This looks like a fairly nice plant and well foliated, but if you turn it around, you discover that all the foliage is coming off of 2 branches. Or 3 branches. And essentially the center of a plant is dead. But leaving that part on makes it look like it's old, because old plants tend to have some dead stuff on them. Some people out in the audience say, "Oh, cut off that dead stuff." Well, that's part of what we really like to have on a bonsai to give an appearance of age over something which is not that old. And you know, I don't know how old this plant is. we always try to make things look old. We don't always. It doesn't make any difference how old it is. So,
We're doing pretty good with that for ourselves.
that's right. That's right. You know, John and I are in our mid-20s, and we don't look. We only look 15, right? So you know, it's
Very nice. Very
so
nice.
this is a time of year which you can repot, you can prune your tropical plants. If you want to head them back real hard, many times almost to the base, leave a couple leaves to keep a plant alive. They'll come out, and if you've got these trees or plants that have become trees, and you think, what can I do? You know, it's a house plant. Well, you know, it's they appreciate being outside in the shade a little bit during the summer, and you can hack them back. And this time of year, they will surprise you with what they will put up with.
Very nice.
I have a question on this plant. You cut off quite a hunk, and it's a fig tree. Have you ever tried propagating the cuttings?
I was already eyeballing that.
We do propagate them most commonly on big things. We will do air layering, in which you essentially cut the bark off for an inch or so and scrape it down, scrape the wood down to where it's white. You want to get all the green part, which is going to be xylem and phloem, off of it, and then you end up getting roots at the top part of that, and so I threw that too far away.
Yeah, you threw it way too far.
So at any rate, but you can do that, and then you put peat moss up around it. You put rooting hormone at the base of the top cut, peat moss around it, and then what we like to use is take an old small pot, cut it open, cut it out, and put it up around the peat moss, or stick the peat moss into it, and then put a plastic bag around it to keep it moist, and have it such that you can open at the top with a twist tie to water it as it needs. And typically with a ficus in a span of, or a fig, probably about in this time of year, and we've just done a couple of big, my wife just did a couple of big ones in our bonsai group, in our bonsai collection, probably 4 to 6 weeks it'll be rooted. So probably before we have to move them in for the fall, we'll be able to pluck them off and repot them.
Excellent.
And other trees and shrubs do it that way. Maples will root in 3 to 4 weeks. They are very good at making.
I'm trying one on a Japanese lilac right now. I've got I ordered some little plastic round balls that you can.
I think you brought those on before.
I bought some of those too. Yeah, those are great.
And no light gets in there, and I usually still wrap them in plastic just to make sure the sphagnum moss stays moist.
You have to bring them in next time so we can check the progress. Okay, John, we're back to you.
Okay, the other thing I brought today was, I'm going to put my glove on because I'm going to, I already got stung this morning early. I brought in a prickly pear cactus. This almost looks like, could be Mickey Mouse.
I was going to say, it's looking a little like Mickey.
But this is a cactus that is hardy in our zone. I have it outside, and I've had these for many, many years. I got my sister, one of my sisters lives in Oklahoma, and she gave me a couple of them, and I've had them for many, many years, and they're really easy to grow. They have a beautiful yellow flower. This is in the cactus, the Cactaceae family. It's Opuntia.
Teamwork.
And this is called
Opuntiaceae.
Yeah, these are called paddles.
Okay.
They are edible, and this one here is one that I'll show. These are the fruits of the flowers, and you can make jam out of those. And you can see this one, I just stuck one of these paddles in ground, and you can see within a couple weeks, maybe 6 weeks, I had real nice roots. Now, the one thing that you want to do is, and I'll show this on this one, is once you break this off, now I'm going to plant this right at this level. You want to leave this callus off for about 3 days. Let it dry. Don't put it, and then you're going to put it in some sand or very good soil, very well drained soil, and you don't water it for about 2 weeks. Once you put it, the soil should be a little bit moist, but not soggy or wet. And it's going to form its own roots, and then you can transplant that to wherever. They do well outside. I have had them in pots survive. They say that if you put them in pots, especially if we have a really cold winter, that you should bring them in. But I have never, and mine I have never had one that has died because of the watering, or because of the
So
cold
does
temperature.
that die all the way back?
No,
It doesn't?
it does not.
Really?
It's going to shrivel. It's going to look like and it may turn a little purplish. It's going to get wrinkled, but as soon as spring comes, the chlorophyll is going to come. And I think what happens is the external chlorophyll kind of dies, that green kind of dies back, and there must be some red and yellow chlorophyll in there that kind of shows through. And so,
Interesting. I
but
would have thought it
you
died
want to
back.
wear leather gloves or something, because these little barbs have hooks on them, and once they get in, I mean, you just can't go in there and pick them off. You have to really pull on them and work them free. The best way to do it, if you get those in your skin, is duct tape.
Noted.
And so another use for duct tape is this full sun. I'm just going over my notes here to make sure I don't forget anything. The main thing that is to let them callus off. They can live 20, 30 years.
Wow.
I've had mine probably over 30 years now. You know, and the original leaves are probably gone many times. But you know, a lot of times they'll get to that big and they'll just lay down, and pretty soon that's rooted, and then you can snip them off and move them. So.
Sometimes during the winter, the pads will collapse against the ground.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. They'll come back up in the spring.
Wow. Interesting.
And,
Okay.
and if you go to the Southwest, you go to the restaurants, and you can find them to eat all over.
Now, do you eat them?
I have not yet,
Not yet.
but
We all know that you're going to give it a shot.
They could be on the grill here.
Oh, okay. We'll look for an update from that. Let's see. Kathy Johnson wrote in on Facebook. She says, now that I've banned squirrels and rabbits from my raised beds, what is eating the marigolds? I don't know how she's banned squirrels and rabbits. I would love more.
Probably fencing, I would guess.
Yeah.
And you can do that with a. Typically, what you will use is 36-inch high for rabbits. Typically, 36-inch high poultry netting, chicken wire. And you bend the bottom 6 inches out at a right angle to the outside, and you bury that with an inch or so of soil, and that keeps the rabbits from tunneling underneath the fence, because without going to the outside, if they're trying to tunnel in, they're standing on what they're trying to tunnel through under. So that doesn't work. And a rabbit can jump 2 feet, but not 2.5 feet. So when you have 36-inch high mesh, you tend to bend the 6 inches out. You have 30 inches left, which is higher than a cottontail can jump.
Hey.
We're not talking about jackrabbits here. We're talking cottontails, and so that'll work if you were going to keep the raccoons out. If you don't support the top 8 inches to a foot, as the raccoon tries to climb it, or a squirrel, it will tend to flop
Just
it back
dump it
over
right-
and dump it back on the ground. You may have to go all the way across the top for raccoons. But to get back to the right question here, and that is that people have this idea that things don't like marigolds, and
I've
it's
heard that.
really not right. Somehow along the line, there's been some research done which has shown that certain varieties of marigolds are going to keep away certain types of nematodes, particularly plant parasitic nematodes that are common in California. And you know, if it's written in California, it's got to be right? So,
Bible.
and that is right. But somehow along the line, people that wrote organic gardening things and things that weren't other gardening books, somehow it got into the idea, urban legend sort of thing, that marigolds repelled insects, and there isn't anything farther from the truth. I mean, they are they will attract aphids in huge numbers, particularly their yellow and orange flowers. We actually use that same color as entomologists in what we call water pan traps, in which we put out a pan of water, that color, and we are able to sample all the aphids in an area just by putting that up on a post. That color is enough to bring the aphids. You don't need anything else.
Wow.
And so when marigolds are blooming, they're bringing in those. They're bringing in leafhoppers. They're bringing in a lot of other plants. There are cutworms that will climb, and the black cutworm that will cut off your tomato plant will climb up on a marigold and eat the tops off at night. Grasshoppers will eat the tops off of marigolds.
So pretty much everything.
Lots of things will feed on marigolds. And they are kind of a bane with people that have public gardens. You'll go and you'll see the marigolds look beautiful any time of the summer, when in fact those marigolds have been replaced once or twice during the summer, because marigolds are very attractive to leafhoppers, which carry a phytoplasma disease called aster yellows, which will kill the marigolds off typically in early to midsummer. And anybody that has a public garden has more to plant back out there and more to plant back out there in the fall, because there's really not any cure for it. You just replace the plants and people don't realize anything else has happened.
Okay.
So it's, you know, the idea that marigolds are something that will keep the pests out of your garden. Actually, entomologists who are doing research on insects will plant marigolds around the edge of a garden to attract them in, so they have plenty of insects to study.
Interesting. I've heard that. I've heard that they repel insects, but now you heard it here first, folks. Okay, we got about 5 minutes left. John, you've got one more.
I just brought in. I wanted to show this is what my tree lily is. This is one of. I had a white one also, and these are called tree lilies because this one here right now is about 8 foot tall.
Wow.
And it's the nice thing with these is I find I have rabbits also and deer that like to eat my lilies. That's the one. They're usually very pest free as far as and they're very hardy. And these up at 8 foot, I haven't had, like Phil says, I haven't had the jackrabbit or anything jump that high to eat the flower bud off yet.
You're doing all right. Are they trellis? Do they need support, or is that freestanding?
The freestanding.
Wow.
The stem is very, very, very heavy, and I've never had one blown over yet.
Nice.
They're not too far from the house, so it does get protected on the south side, so it gets some nice filtered sun. And they're very fragrant, and Phil was saying that these are more fragrant in the morning, so that they're probably
evening for the morning,
so that they're moth during the night. That's when
they're pollinated.
They're pollinated by the moths then. So
very nice, and the smell is really, really.
Yeah, it's.
I said earlier, it smells like vacation.
If I put this in our kitchen, just a couple of these, you can smell it throughout the. It's almost too strong sometimes.
Wow. Excellent. Okay, thank you. Phil, we've got 2 minutes left.
We can do
you've
that.
got one item left.
We've had a lot of storms through the Midwest recently, and a lot of tree branches have come down. And what happens is many times people get tree branches down, they start wondering, well, why was that tree branch dead? And there's a lot of reasons, but what they will do is they will look at them and they'll see holes in the bark, little round holes or little flattish holes. Or if the bark's off, like here, you can see that there's some tunneling and boring that's occurred associated with this. A couple different types of borers. So I actually had an ant nest in here when I pulled it out this morning. But these are secondary borers. The branch died due to being overshaded by the tree branches up above, or maybe it just, if they get too many branches, they'll just pinch it off at the trunk. The tree will itself and kill the branch because it doesn't need it anymore. And then you'll get secondary borers that'll come in and they'll make all kinds of holes and tunneling and so on. Don't get upset about this stuff. This is nature, part of nature. The borers that attack these dead branches aren't going to attack your healthy tree for the most part, and there's no reason to get upset about them.
I noticed there's a few lichens on there, which means that you've got good healthy air around your house.
Good healthy air, and also some horticulturists would say the tree isn't growing real fast because the lichens have time to grow on it before the bark sloughs it off.
So the insects know that this is a weakened or dying piece,
they attack.
and they'll kind of tap and check
They're-
and see if that's the best one to
They're
attack.
specialists on the dead and
Yes.
dying.
You know, it's so fascinating. My 7-year-old would just see a rifle, but you're seeing like insect lives and habits and ants and who lives where and what the disease of this tree was. It's just fascinating to see, you know, how each person interprets.
And if it was a whole dead tree, then you'd be looking at sources of places for
Yes.
woodpeckers to live,
Yes.
squirrels to den up,
Yeah.
all this sort of stuff, and
At my house, that's
possums
a
and
sword.
raccoons to live inside the trunk. So yeah, a tree that dies is not a waste. It is another habitat.
Yeah, you got a story to tell as well. All right, gentlemen, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming in, and thank you so much for watching. If you've got any questions for the experts, you can send them in to us at yourgarden@gmail.com or search for us on socials. Just look for Mid-American Gardener, and we will see you next time. Good night.